in you with faith and be showered in reward. Oh, that's the power of remembering our love. It's the best way to purify your heart. And know you will be loved by the merciful one. 'Cause that's the power of remembering our love.
Masisondele, masisondele, hela nokolo, helele.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Subhanallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to School Matters. Yes, alhamdulillah, we are safe and well. School Matters have been asked, requested by you, our avid listener, to please educate us on this topic as parents, as just someone out there from an Islamic point of view. What is going on? LGBTQ, what's going on? Well, everyone has freedom of speech, religion, and culture. But according to, today we're focusing more from an Islamic point of view. But according to Islamic criminal law, homosexuality is a major sin because it is contrary to religious norms, morals, and, the way we live our life and against our teachings, and human nature. Well, more than 1 billion Muslims inhabit this planet, and they inhabit, geographically, linguistics, and cultural space that are enormously diverse. As a result, our beliefs, their beliefs, are an issue, and issues relating to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people cannot be easily summarized. So we as Muslim parents want guidance. I have received numerous emails. Our guest doesn't need no introduction. He's no first time to School Matters. And if you're going to listen to him, he even had his own show. I just asked him, when you're coming back. Our guest is Sheikh Fahim. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Sumaya, jazakallah khair for having me.
When last were you in the studios?
Studios, I don't think it was too long ago. I did start a little program in between.
Yeah.
But then consistency became a problem because of special broadcasting and stuff. But yeah, not too long ago. I would say about 3 months.
Okay, we inshallah, we're making dua you come back.
Inshallah.
All right. So there's so much going on. So today I said, why are you on? Because you have the Islamic knowledge and you've just written a book concerning all of this here. We can commence with, the book, your basic discussion, what made you write this book on LGBTQ for a sheikh to write it?
Well, so let's be clear. The book is not focused on LGBTQ.
Yeah.
It's on the subject of Dajjal. Obviously, the program that I've done here, I think from 2013 to about 2022, that was focused on eschatology. So there was a large number of people who kept asking me when I'm going to do a standalone book on the subject. And there was always something else that came up. So I decided that, look, now is the time, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I want to commend you on this topic. Because I've also been, you may not know, I've been in the UK involved in television, Islamic television. And it was always a breath of fresh air when we had people wanting to take on subject matters that are considered taboo in some, or when people behind the desks are saying, look, we shouldn't touch on these topics, or why are you touching on these topics? Not to say that's your particular situation, but to actually have someone focusing on both the academic sectors, the secular region as well, dealing with this, and I know you're quite passionate about it. It's very, very important. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. In terms of your question on the book, so the idea was to, when we look now at everything that's happening in the world, of course, post October 7th, then we have all of these major ideological shifts, this bombardment in the education sector.
Terrible.
So I thought this was the right time to do a book on Dajjal. And I was warned by my immediate family members, my kids, don't make it too academic. So we try to give it a little bit of a middle path where we appeal to the general populace, but also it can stand in the realm of academia as well.
Okay. You know, being a sheikh, being in a situation which no one wants to talk about it, coming onto an Islamic radio station, I don't know, we probably might have listeners that like, why are they discussing this? I got children listening. But this is the reality. We cannot sweep things under the carpet.
Yeah.
Today I had a colleague who asked me, what do I do? He discovered 2 girls are lesbians. Should I inform the parent? So I messaged her back and I said, well, if you're looking at the laws, teachers, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You cannot do that because the whole system it's like normal. So you just leave it. But what if the parent don't know? So you look at it, you're in a catch-22. You know, what do you do? If you inform the parent can lash out at you. How is my child's gender or transgender, whatever it is, affecting you? You're just a teacher, and they can even sue you. But then on the flip side, what if the parent doesn't know? And it's see what we're going through.
Yeah, look, so there's a few things there. One is you mentioned that there's this idea that some people may be asking now, why are we discussing this on a radio station that's going out to so many people? Well, I'll give you a simple logic, and I hope that you use this in future if anyone asks you, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala found it necessary to discuss the people of Lut,
Exactly, Lut al-Islam.
so who are we to question the idea of a subject matter that goes beyond what we call the norms of society?
Yeah.
But in reality, this has become the new norm. So by that effect, if Allah Azza wa Jal found it necessary, and this is one of the beauties of the Quran,
Yeah.
if someone asked that, why would the God of Islam in the final testament choose a subject like homosexuality in his final book? We only have to look around to see that his wisdom is manifest before us when we see it happening all around us today. So that's the first point. Obviously, in relation to what's happening in the schools, and of course, as teachers, you also are governed by the bodies and the regulatory system that's there. You can't do much, but this is one of the arguments that we make, that the system we find ourselves in today is designed for the oppressor, not to the oppressed. Now, whether that's physical oppression, moral oppression, ideological oppression, religious oppression, it's designed. And a simple thing is, when we look at the laws of most countries in the world, if someone enters your home and you take action, they can sue you. So who is the law really being designed for? The same would apply to this particular situation. In the case that you brought up, you're caught in this, as you mentioned, the catch-22. Do you go forth? And the final thing on your opening statement there, the beauty of the fitrah of the human being is you don't have to be a Muslim to recognize that something is wrong. And as Muslims, because we train our fitrah continuously, it becomes really difficult to keep this information within us. Because the fitrah now recognizes truth from falsehood. So that, I suppose, is the real catch-22. But my suggestion is, we have to maintain our fitrah at the best possible ways. So it is difficult, but we have to discuss and understand what's going on.
Now, there are Muslims around the world. I mentioned that in my opening station. And our Muslim brothers and sisters, lots of them follow, even though they're Muslims, their cultural beliefs. When I was researching, I found things which were quite shocking, that you have Muslim people lobbying to support and for this, and they're actually taking out verses, ayats, and trying to justify it. Have you came across this?
Yeah, 100%.
I was shocked. I was totally shocked.
Yeah. So this is actually a very, very important thing you brought up, right? So in Islam, we know that alcohol is haram. Let's start with a simple example. Alcohol is haram. If a Muslim consumes alcohol, he's committed a sin, a major sin, because there's explicit evidence, right? But when a Muslim says alcoholism is okay and I reject the the verses of Quran that speak out against it, then the Muslim now enters in the realm of kufr. So they now can basically exit the fold of Islam. So one is committing a sin, knowing it's a sin and dealing with it, and dealing with it. The other is rejecting it as even being a sin, because now you reject Quran. So if a person is advocating for this because they've basically been manipulated by Western philosophy and they can't tell the difference, and they think, okay, freedom of speech is correct, freedom of rights is correct. But if a person says, no, I believe it's correct because the Quran is wrong, then this person has now dabbled in kufr and is now basically going to be considered out of the fold of Islam. So this is why we tell our people, if a subject matter is not your forte, just be very, very careful what you say.
That's why I have you.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So yeah, it's a very important point. And yes, there are people manipulating, trying to interpret. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that the verses of the Quran are two. They are either explicit or linguistically ambiguous. They're either muhkam or mutashabihat. You'll find that the Quran tells us that those who have perversity in their hearts, they trail behind the linguistically ambiguous verses because they can manipulate meanings. And the Quran is saying when you see people doing this, it's because of what's in their heart. So that's the problem. I think it's an epistemological issue. They either don't know truth from falsehood, or battling with it on their own, they end up leaving Islam. So Allah Ta'ala safeguard our children in particular.
You know, let's understand, as you're explaining to us from an Islamic perspective, the first phase, right? Homosexuality.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you go back, so right now we're looking at LGBTQ with all the additionals. That it started off as LGB, then LGBT, then LG. When is it going to end, right? So when we rewind, we're going to see that the major shift that pushed this particular aspect started with the normalization of homosexuality. I think last week was it last week that you called me as well?
Yeah, last week you're busy.
Right. So last week we did a little interview, I think, right? And I mentioned over there, if you have to normalize something, it was never normal to begin with. Okay. So when homosexuality was first normalized to the point that, I mean, think about it, right? Something that's new to society was introduced, and then you were told that if you have a problem with it, you are homophobic. Yeah. So it's a very, very smart PR system that they do. And then now you're afraid to say something. Once that reached a point where everyone was okay with it, majority wise, they had ensured that the governments of the world, and for those of you who don't know, if you delve into, let's just say, chain stores, right? They all are sitting under the umbrella of, I'm not going to give free advertising, but under the umbrella of huge organizations. What most people don't realize is when you get upset that a certain chain store is promoting something, that's because at the top level, the think tanks are paying them that, look, if you start mentioning this, you're going to get so many % rebates. So, I mean, if you think about a general chain store, what do they have to do? They're selling groceries. What do they have to do with LGBTQ? So why are they promoting it? It's because they've used business strategy to employ it. So we're seeing that there. Then governments are given lots of money in return for promoting these ideologies. So there are a group of think tanks around the world that are puppeteering this entire thing. And that's where we're trying to say that, look, there's a Dajjali hand in all of this. There's a grave deception at play, and we need to be aware of it. So it starts with homosexuality. And just to whet your appetite, for those of you who don't know, there seems to now be a shift to normalize pedophilia. And that's the next step now. You see, so our question is, where does it end? And this is why Islam, there's something in Sharia called Saddul Dhari'a, where if the scholars see the inevitable end of something, they say, no, you close it down now. If you close it down now, you never reach that point. And that's something that should have been done. Unfortunately, when you don't have an Islamic governance system, then these things prevail.
And when you look at our youth today, everyone tends to live one culture, the way they dress, what they do, where they go. So it's looking kind of attractive, and also it's normal. It's normal. You switch on the television, it's normal. You look at the Olympics. I mentioned this
Oh.
on my show the other week, previous week.
Terrible.
And on Saturday night when we did Nightline, it was shocking. People were in shock. I even mentioned that the Christian people of Europe all started praying
Yeah.
in masses.
It's actually had, contrary to what they thought, I mean, yes, it's some kind of, if you look at it, it looks like some kind of sadistic ritual. But there were many people, and I spent a lot of time on Twitter, and well, X, and I've seen so many non-Muslims, white Europeans, as you mentioned, who were just saying boycott the Olympics.
Yeah.
So there is some goodness, so we can see that, look, okay, the majority of humankind still has some morality left in them, but it's now so open, and this is where my gripe is.
Yeah.
With people who say, why are you discussing it? Our response should be, why should we not discuss it?
We can save our children. We can make a child realize, a Muslim child or a child belonging to the Abrahamic faith. We know there's freedom of speech. I'm not moving this because even our political parties, which we support, are for this. But then, as you mentioned, there's different people who are lobbying for this here and for their various reasons. We can save someone, and that's the sawab.
That's the very purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets to begin with, right? He sent them what we can call a kind of divine spoon feeding, to say, look, that you need to find me, this is how you're going to do it. And for us, alhamdulillah, the Quran, holistic in every way, it even covers these topics, right? Maybe not directly, sometimes implied, but that gives us a window to actually tackle them. So once more, if you as a Muslim parent are listening to the program or will listen to the program, if you're not sitting with your children to actually tell them who they are biologically and why that is so, then you may be in a situation where your child comes to you one day and then you're going to phone us.
Yeah.
And we've had that with atheism, right? We've been telling people atheism, and there's no investigation of what they're being taught in university. And then they come home, Sheikh, one day, you know what, my son tells me that he believes in evolution, therefore Allah does not exist. Now, what were you doing all that time?
Yeah.
So we have to balance the seesaw, basically.
And we tend to also go back to our Islamic storytelling.
Very, very important.
That is so important. This is happening all over. A lot of schools don't discuss it, especially our religious schools. Parents are belonging to different organizations, well known in the community, influential, embarrassed to seek help. I mean, you do a lot of counseling.
Yes. Yeah. So look, that is a reality. Unfortunately, the human ego is a very, very difficult thing to understand. And the old saying, you cut your nose to spite your face. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing today. I would say that there is a dire need for every single madrasa in the world to introduce at an early age, because remember, if they're being introduced to this from grade 1, grade 2, you only want to introduce it in grade 7 because you think now they're capable to understand. And with the rise of technology today, with everything at the tips of their fingers, by then their minds have already been made up. They've seen superstars that they grew up with, and they've made that change, and they're like, okay, well, it's okay, I can do this. So we have to be parents who are responsible. Remember, Rasulullah told us that, all of you are shepherds, and you're going to be asked about your flock. So the least that you could do is have a discussion and let them understand that you're open to their questions, to their doubts. However, we worry so much about hurting their feelings, but we're not worried about hurting their akhirah. So sometimes we have to tell them straight that I will not tolerate this. We worry about, don't say anything, he's going to feel bad, and then we're appealing to their emotion.
Let's go and see a psychiatrist, let's go for counseling.
Yes, you must. If you say, okay, look, if someone is saying I'm afraid to seek help, this issue transcends religion. Right? So it doesn't mean that if you belong to one religion, then only it affects you. It affects everyone. Right? So LGBTQ has no religion. So my advice is, if you feel as a Muslim that who do you speak to, go to a non-Muslim psychiatrist. I mean, they're not going to judge you because they don't have that standard of morality. But do something. Don't leave it. That's the important thing.
You know, you do a lot of counseling, and I know we probably have parents or even learners, children, just the young adult listening to you. I'm confused. Maybe I should contact Sheikh Fahim. Can you tell us what is it? Islamic Lifestyle Solution?
Islamic Lifestyle Solutions, correct. So they could check our website, or they could contact me directly. They could get my number from Al Ansar. We're happy to assist. Obviously, you know what, everything is confidential, but I think we have to just be able to ask the question. If we're afraid to ask questions, I mean, when we look at the hadith corpus, I mean, look at Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. If she did not ask the things that she asked, women today would be lost. Right? They would not know which way to turn. So it's important to at least make an inquiry. And this is why when I wrote the book, Dajjal, the Deceiver, I decided to put this on the subject of homosexuality and LGBTQ under an ideological deception. Because this is what it is. It's basically a deception that makes what's wrong seem right, under the guise of, and I don't know if you want to touch on this later or now, the difference between gender and the biological sex of a person. This is a big problem.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. So I recall, I mean, you'll recall as well, when we were in school.
I think we touched on this many years ago.
Perhaps, I think when you invited me before. But this particular thing, which I discovered, not too long ago, when I was researching for the book, we used to write on our school test papers. It used to be, or in your enrollment forms, it used to be name, surname, and sex.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's gone to name, surname, and gender. Now, this is the deception. The deception is that sex and gender are now synonyms. This is a big problem because they're not. Why? Gender is subjective. Gender is what you feel you are. But the truth of the matter is, your biology never changes.
Yeah.
So if you have the XX chromosome as female, XY chromosome as male, there's this idea that, look, if you were born a male or a female, and by gender you feel the change, so you could go for a transplant, you could go for a sex change, as they call it, right? Now, here's the funny thing. If a person takes drugs to suppress hormones, if they go for a procedure, they are being lied to that they are no longer male or no longer female. All they're doing is they're altering their external presence, but biologically they never change. So that's a deception. And there are many people who in the beginning, that's what they assumed, because that's what the doctors told them. And then later on, they come to realize that in reality, after 5, 6, 10 years down the line, I am still what I was born as. I've just changed the representation. So what I tell the young boys is, you could strip a car down to the very chassis and put a different body on it. But as long as that engine and the body parts and the manufacturing stamp of the vehicle is where it came from, that doesn't change. And that's the problem that we're seeing now. This is where I feel the deception has reached a point where logic is out of the window. So gender is subjective, because where do we end? Where does it end? I mean, that's an important question. If I say I'm a duck, who's going to tell me no? Because gender means I can be whoever I want to be.
Today I can be a girl, tomorrow I can be
anything.
If you think about it, right, beginning of this year and last year, it was so high. Schools with the boys were wearing dresses and the boys were doing funny things. But as an educator, as a fellow citizen, we cannot say it's wrong. We are now talking from an Islamic perspective, and we want to educate our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Yeah, so again, you're touching on some important things. So I'll tell you something. How amazing was the insight of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And this is something I'm quite passionate about. Some parents don't like to hear it, but I'm never here to tell you what you want to hear, right? So what you need to hear. We have this thing where we are letting our little boys wear girlish colors. We are letting our little boys grow their hair long because it looks cute. We are telling our little boys that the moment they fall down, that, we mollycoddling to the point that they no longer know what it is to be a boy. our girls, oh, she's small, man. Cut her hair like a boy's. It's no problem. When she's big, then she's okay. We're letting our girls dress up like men, and then when they feel like that's who they are, we're telling them what's wrong with you. No, what's wrong with us as parents, right? Now, look at the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he forbade men from wearing red. Now, the ulama mentioned not red that's broken up, pure red, right? Why did he forbade men from wearing red? Because red was the color at that time of a female. Because it evoked a sense of beauty. This is why modern Western philosophy has this concept of the lady in the red dress, right? So the Prophet said that men should not wear red. He also said that men should not wear gold.
Yeah.
Why? Feminine. Now, if you bring that today, the norms of society is that female is pink. The whole, we grew up with the idea that
Pink
the Barbie, right? Yeah, and blue. So some people say, okay, we can't wear red, but we'll dress the boy in full pink. You understand?
It was a trend at one time, pink.
Right. So this is where I'm saying, as parents, if you're going to say, oh, it's okay, they're just children, or don't worry about it, yeah, you actually, at the time where they are like sponges to absorb information, you're giving them the wrong information. And when sometimes when fathers are strict on this, I've noticed people come to us and say, look, I'm telling my wife not to dress the child like this.
Yeah.
And she's insisting. You do get the opposite as well, right? Where the father is saying, because it's his daughter, let her wear short pants, obviously. But we don't realize that it's counterproductive, it's counterintuitive. And then we come to this point where we can't understand how they went there. We planted the seed. And that's something we have to correct as well.
It's so important to talk. I know life is so busy that we don't have time to sit and talk and discuss with our children. And, this is the way the world is going currently. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so the book is, I try not to make it too long.
Yeah.
Again, we've done some books gone into the realm of 500 and 480 pages. So I said, okay, we'll keep this one under 250. So whenever we were going to, we said no. So the book is basically chapter 1 demystifies Dajjal, right? Because our kalima has a beautiful psychology.
Yeah.
It starts with negation of the negative. So, La ilaha, there is none worthy of worship. Why? Because the human being, in order to understand who God is, you have to understand what God is not.
Yeah.
So, negation of the negative. And once the negation of the negative is complete, then illallah. So, following that premise, we said, okay, let's demystify that. Who is Dajjal? And we looked at concepts like questions like, will Dajjal be an AI bot? Will Dajjal be a system? Will he be a man? Will he be all of these things? And then we went on to some of the ideological issues, political issues, economical issues associated with Dajjal. And then, although he's not mentioned in the Quran, how do we link it to the Quran? And then, of course, Dajjal will be a false Messiah. So we have to understand the true Messiah, which is Isa alayhi salam. So we try to, give it a good mix. Hopefully, it can be a means of guidance to the people.
That's what we need. Our Muslim youth today are so busy studying, chasing careers, everything else on gadgets, on mobiles, devices. But how many of you, I'm guilty of this, who really go and read all the Islamic stories? Because I know we definitely forgot some of the Islamic stories, what we were thought. Yeah. So it's so important for us to get a series. There's so many books here in Al Ansar bookshop. Get something instead of reading any of the old European folklores. We're not saying don't read it. You can also read the Islamic stories.
Yeah, look, what we say to people is balance.
Balance.
Right? We're not saying don't pursue academia. Don't, do it. But if your foundation is not Islam, then you're building your house on a very weak foundation. And this is why in the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing he conveyed to Rasulullah was Iqra.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, look, there are some people that are very visual learners. Like I can tell you, I never read an English book that
Now
was
you're writing
that, like a
500
novel,
pages.
like a novel. I never read
And
one
this
of
is
those.
not
in
your
my life.
first book. How many books? You've written quite a few.
This is my ninth.
Alhamdulillah.
In 10 years.
And you've written many articles too.
Jay, alhamdulillah. So this is the ninth, and but that's the point, So someone tells me, "Oh, I can't read." Well, I can tell you, I was also that person. But it's all about reading what your passion is towards, and this is why your point was that people are studying and researching and enjoying everything else. Why? They'll tell you it's my passion. So where is our same passion for our deen?
True.
And I get it. I understand it. I mean, not every book is going to be appealing in the Islamic realm. And also, you must understand, when you have to start reading Islamic books, then you feel like the onus is on you because you know now
what's going on.
But you have to understand that not knowing is not going to get you off the hook as well. We can't claim to Allah Ta'ala that, I didn't know. It's like, okay, what stopped you, right? When you want to buy a car, you spend the whole night on 20 websites. You can even open your store the next day because of the information, Why can't you do that for your deen? So, we're hoping that people say, okay, inshallah, we'll try to learn, we'll try to read a bit. Like I tell my daughter in particular, my kids, if you don't have the time to read an entire chapter, entire book, then when you read your salah, read one page. But what my appeal is to parents is, okay, fine, 7 days a week, we're working, we're busy, children are studying. But there's usually, most families, I know in our family, it's Friday night where families get together and have supper, right? You tell them, look, kids, this Friday, our discussion is going to be, example, LGBTQ. Whatever research you can do on your own, Google it if you have to. But let's have a discussion. And then you have one day in the week. Is that too hard to ask? One day in the week where the central focal point is something thematic to Islam.
Yeah.
That's achievable. If we all can't do it individually, there's that one time we were together, do it then.
That's, when we were discussing it on other shows, our Islamic knowledge, we are not using it. And we don't have the time as parents, because think about it, when we were in school, we knew that we needed to go to madrasa, we needed to do this as Muslims, regardless what. Can you discuss why, is it a deceptive ideal?
So LGBTQ is deceptive because it uses the idea of be anything you want to be, where in reality you can't. This is something we have to realize. Like, example, when people talk about free will, someone tells me, I have absolutely free will. Okay, so can you scale over a 50-story building? They say, I can't. So you don't have free will. You have freedom to think, freedom to make a choice. It's not free will, right? Independent from, astaghfirullah, the will of Allah subhanahu. Likewise, the idea of freedom of rights is being crossed over between functionality of people. So you in Islam, males and females have equal rights, but their functions are very, very different. And that's where the issue with LGBTQ is they're promoting it as something that is okay and normal. You can, I don't know if you know this, somewhere in Japan, I think it was 2-3 years ago, a man paid and underwent surgery to become a dog.
I read that, and I read it again, and
guess what? He can't reverse the process now because he can't talk. Do you understand?
And they even had him walking on the street.
Correct, on the leash.
Yeah.
Someone had him on the leash, right? Now, this is delusion to the highest order. We have groups of people who actually believe that they are dogs. They meet once a week and they all, bark and, all of these things. This is telling us that there's a problem in society. And it all boils down to two very important words, objectivity and subjectivity. Now, in Islam, if you go 5, 6, 7, 800 years beyond that, one of the first things that our ulama discussed in a book of theology was what we call ontology. What makes something objectively real? So what makes this bottle of water a bottle of water? Or is it, if I think it's a grenade, it's a grenade, right? How do we make the distinction between the two? And for us, it's because حقائق الأشياء ثابتة, that the realities of things exist extramentally in the real world as it is. There's a great lie that has been told. And beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Well, then that's subjective.
Yeah.
It's not objective, is it? Right? So that's subjectively, correct, but objectively it's incorrect.
True.
Because something exists as it is, the way it is, how it is viewed in and of itself. If it has a definition, therefore it will have a certain color. So the problem with LGBTQ is that it's marketed as this wonderful ideal, but the people who fall prey to it and fall victim to it don't realize that they're robbing themselves of their human function and functionality. So if we come back to example, homosexuality, I hear the objection from non-Muslims. They keep telling us, well, if we study the animal kingdom, we find homosexual tendencies in animals, so this is a justification. Now there's two major problems. There's more than that, but there's two major problems. One is, if we look statistically at the amount of animals who do not do this versus the amount of animals that do this, then you go with the majority, that it's incorrect, right? So these are anomalous views. The other is that if an animal commits an act of homosexuality or behaves in the opposite sex, how does it justify the reality when we know, example, lions? If a lion invades another pride, the first thing that it does, it commits infanticide. It will kill the cubs from the other female, allowing it the opportunity to now mate with the female. So then if we are saying that if an animal does something, therefore it is correct, so are we promoting infanticide too? That men must now kill the children of... it's crazy. Where does it end?
You are imparting such... you are making our listeners, including me, think. What advice do you have for our Muslim parents out there?
I think it's going to be repetitive, but I'm going to say it again. There's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ told us to turn back to the Quran and the Sunnah. At the end of the day, our moral compass is firmly fixed on the Quran, on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, the ulama, the scholars, the schools of fiqh and their rulings. The problem that I see is an imbalance, which I alluded to earlier. If, as an example, you are sending your child to madrasa from grade 1 and they're getting school education, and then what I find is that after grade 7, we're telling our children to pursue only academia. So what happens to the seesaw? It's going to be imbalanced. Now, when it's continuously imbalanced in this way, then we can't complain when they make the incorrect decision because we didn't give them the balance. The story of Musa and Khidr alayhi salam in Surah Al-Kahf, when we say that the two oceans meet, right? So it speaks about Maraj al-Bahrain and that kind of thing. When the two oceans met. Example, Imam Baydawi, he mentions that the two oceans were also the ocean of Musa and the ocean of Khidr. And one represented external knowledge and one represented internal knowledge. So the secular information is going to give us knowledge for the external realm to a degree. The Islamic perspective gives us both the internal insight and how to use that insight for external benefit. But if you're only going to be focusing on the external, then you're losing out on that.
And to our Muslim educators out there who are teaching, how do they go about it? This is such a tough one. Your Rosie, your job.
This one is a pickle, but again,
biryani.
I'm going to be very, very clear, right? When we look at, let's go to alcoholism. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he cursed not only the one who consumes it, but the one who manufactures it, the one who delivers it, the one who, there's a 10, right? If we apply the same principle, if something is explicitly stated in the Quran to be incorrect, a Muslim cannot promote it as correct.
Yeah.
So someone once told me, like what you said, he said, Sheikh, hey, but now I'm a teacher. What do I do? I was like, why can't you change your subject? Right? So he's like, okay, it's I said, okay, work towards it. If you spend 10 years promoting something that's wrong and you haven't done anything about it, it's a sad reality. But when you have to wait, someone will say, oh, this Sheikh Fahim thing is so easy, right? I understand. I did teach in Islamic schools. I did teach subjects, but I know it's not an easy thing. But you have to come to a point. And let me tell you, if someone makes that conformed decision that, Ya Allah, you guide me, I'm going to choose whatever other options I have. Believe me, if you do that with tawakkul, which, by the way, I wrote another book on that. If you do that with tawakkul, you have no idea the amount of doors will open for you because your niyyah was pure. It was clean.
Intention.
I know someone, he used to work for a company, and he was there for about 25 years, never missed a day, and he saved and wanted to go for Hajj. His boss told him, it doesn't matter how long you've been here, if you go, you're not coming back. So he had to go home, make a decision, spoke with us, we advised him, and he said, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm going for Hajj. Today, his boss is his customer.
Oh,
yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change things in a way that's unimaginable. So it's a tough decision, but decisions have to be made. Yeah.
You gave me a set time, 7:55. You need to leave. Jazakallah so much for taking the time. And inshallah, we're going to have many more shows on this topic. I think there's messages coming through that you explained it so well. Do you have material and contact if parents would like to?
Yeah, so they can contact me. If you contact me by phone, it's 073-129-0079, or they can message me, if they don't want a phone, or they can email me on Sheikh Fahim, that's with a Y, sheikhfahim10@gmail.com, or they can contact our website, islamiclifestylesolutions.co.za. We'll happily assist to the best of our ability.
Jazakallah so much for joining us in your busy day.
You're most welcome, and thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'd like to thank our guest Sheikh Fahim and our tech Mondi for making this show possible. My email address is sumayakhan.outlook.com. Well, you must have heard School Matters. Yes, we are continuing for Nelson Mandela Day. Yes, that was last month, but we are still continuing. Al Ansar Outreach and School Matters team will sponsor learners in 67 schools in KZN, providing hot meals, stationery, and other school supplies. All you have to do, if you are a learner, teacher, or even a principal, send a motivational letter together with your school name, number of learners in school, the contact details of your principal, and why you should be chosen. You can email that to me, sumayakhan.alansar@outlook.com. Do not miss out on this amazing, absolutely fabulous opportunity to get something absolutely free. And we have 67 schools, so don't think that it's all gone. They are still there. Well, oh Allah, anyone from this ummah upon other than the truth that thinks he is upon the truth, make him return to the truth to become of the people of the truth. Believes, exhorts their devil by obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.
Masisondele,